Good evening. I'd like to open the third meeting of the Milton Planning Board for fiscal year 2020. I'm Cheryl Tagayas, the chair.
Denny Swenson, secretary.
Julia Getman, clerk.
William Clark, planning director.
Kathleen O'Donnell, member.
April Anderson Lamero, member.
Okay. Administrative items tonight include our next meeting dates of September 12th and September 26th. But we also have some other meetings we want to let folks know about. So I'm going to pass. There's 3 to go that way and 2 to go this way.
Is Rich coming tonight?
I don't know. I didn't hear, and I don't recall if he said anything at the last meeting about not being available.
Okay.
Bill and I attended the housing committee meeting yesterday, Bill?
Yes.
And they have engaged Karen Sunderberg, I think is, to update the housing production plan. And they are planning a public forum. And the date, I think is confirmed now at this date of Saturday, September 14th. Melinda did ask about, I guess Karen had suggested that they could have a separate session for staff and elected officials. That is done sometimes with these. But I don't know if that's going to be something that's planned, but just to give you a heads up, that might be something we're requested to attend. But if not, we're definitely requested to attend this housing forum. The housing production plan gets, once it's finalized, will be reviewed by both the select board and the planning board, and then it gets approved or endorsed by both bodies. So we do have a role to play in that, and so that's why I was invited yesterday and why we're invited to the forum. Okay, and then the Master Plan Implementation Committee met on Monday and is nearly ready to pass on to the planning board for consideration the overlay zoning. We wanted to do that, the committee wants to do that at a public forum, and was thinking that well, I guess I should back up. One of the reasons why this is being brought up now too is that I think Bill announced at our last meeting that the town meeting that was to be scheduled for October has been moved to January. And the date now to submit articles for January is
10/11.
10/11. Because there was some confusion because the date we had was a weekend date before. So 10/11. So having these 2 meetings with this timing allows 2 planning board meetings before that date.
Yeah, right.
Okay? So again, if we can't get everyone at these meetings, at least if we can get a quorum and we can try and get everyone up to date on it. That's what's driving a little bit of the schedule, okay? And then Bill also wanted to let everyone know that the Traffic Mitigation Committee is having a public presentation of the draft report on September 19th. So that's on our list.
It's the last
Hi, Rich.
public session. Doesn't mean that you still can't take and make comments to the wiki map. Go to the town's website for the wiki map and you can still add in your comments to different points all around town.
Which, again, for those who may be watching, would be something that they're looking for as much feedback from people as possible. So how do they find this wiki map?
Wiki map. It's on the town's website. Look under traffic mitigation. There's a link right there. It's on the front page.
Okay.
And that's public safety, traffic, any issue that you feel is traffic related. You can mark it up on that map.
Julie, can you share that with, Rich? Bill sent this to me, so you can get a copy from him too. All right, so, and then lastly, the Route 138 corridor study that Mass DOT is doing. They're having a public meeting on October 22nd, 6:30 PM at Fuller Village. And again, I think, especially as we were considering that when we were
Going to give
discussing
an
Wolcott
overview.
Woods.
They'll give an overview of the whole project from the Stoughton line to the Boston line. They will have breakout sessions after they give that, and they will break it into sections. For Milton, that will be the part from Blue Hill Parkway down to Robin Street. From Robin Street to the Ponce Valley Parkway, from the Ponce Valley Parkway to Brush Hill Road, and then there's another one from there that goes to Royal Street, and then Canton has their own. So there'll be breakout tables at the back of the room, or around the room. After they give an overview, they'll come back and, this is just before their 25%, so
I saw that the Bike Advisory Committee had a post, I think on Facebook, suggesting that if people are interested in the bike lane aspect of that they should attend the meeting, and also to give the input on that wiki map as well.
there is a proposal for sidewalks on both sides with bikeways. There's a dedicated bikeway. There's different proposals. And again, if you go to the traffic mitigation website, there's a link to the 138 corridor study. And the corridor study is being done by MassDOT, Mass Department of Transportation. So it's not ours, but we have input to it. It originally was going to be in the beginning of September. They pushed it to the end of October, just so they can get more on-the-ground information from the comments that came both from Milton and Canton staff to MassDOT.
All right?
So, I don't, so will the planning board be providing any feedback to this, to MassDOT? Is that something that falls under the planning board because it's a planning issue?
No, but you have the
Individuals,
opportunity.
as
to.
Individuals? Because I do think that this is a concern townwide, because if they do add a lane of traffic on 138, in addition to what is already there, it is in fact welcoming more traffic off of the highway, welcoming cut-through traffic into town. And that runs counter to all of these issues that we've been dealing with, and we're working on traffic mitigation bylaws and so on and so forth. This is the kind of thing that, as a community, we really have to be careful of.
Well, I mean, people are cutting through anyway, so I don't know
there's that.
how that makes any, and it's already a mess.
Sure, but adding another lane doesn't really help anyone but the highway. It doesn't help Milton. It's not great for the Blue Hills. If we instead had, double bicycle, that's more access for bikes and walking to the Blue Hills, that's a win for the community. That's more of a win for the community than having a lane, an additional lane than what is already there.
So if you want to propose that the planning board take official positions on it,
I don't,
Bill, there's no harm
I-
in that, right? I mean, we could do that, right?
Sure.
If you want to debate it at the meetings.
I mean, every one of these will have multiple options. We still are several years away from construction. They don't have all the money, but they do have a lot of the money for the project. The longer they wait, the more the project seems to grow. The issue may not be that they're putting in another lane as much as it is they're providing a turning lane into the park and ride. They're providing, they're going to do something at the jug handle of Canton Ave, Brush Hill Road, Blue Hill Ave. Somewhere in there, they're going to do a redesign on what's there now. There's several different proposals before them. All of them are being studied. Which one shakes out? I don't know. That's...
All right, so we're all
Yes, we'll
encouraged
do.
to attend that meeting, and I suppose we can discuss whether we want to put that on an agenda following that meeting. One thing I think we did do as a board, issue a letter through the select board, I believe, showing support for continued investment in the trolley when that was an issue, because of the smart growth aspect of keeping trolley service. So I do think, you know, the fact that if it dovetails into things like complete streets and other things that, you know, we are supportive of, then I think, you know, having a position as a board is fine. But first, I think let's all see if we can attend the meeting and then see what comes of that. If we can have a discussion about it and see if there's consensus about what a position might be.
I do know that one of the sidewalk issues that was discussed during the Walcott Woods hearings, they are going to build at least part of that sidewalk that will go up to where the jug handle goes in and
Right.
makes that turn. On their property, within the state right-of-way, they will do that. So they are listening. This isn't the last time you'll hear it, but this is one of the points that if you want to get it designed, now's the time to
Right, okay.
prioritize the area.
Just to bring Rich up to speed, I was saying that, so there's a public hearing on the 138 corridor study. So that's sort of on, you know, the Upper Canton Avenue, you know, as you enter into Milton. And we may want to take a position on this as a planning board. Some of us might not, but I lean toward doing that because, you know, as in East Milton, when a few roads go in the wrong direction or get widened and it welcomes more cut-through traffic, it affects our planning in the future greatly. So if we can do things in advance to prevent something like that, it might be a good thing.
Okay, so, Bill, we don't have a time definitive here for the public hearing for Thayer.
The last meeting, we said 7:15.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
So I'm going to suggest we come back to minutes. And I'll just see if there's anyone here for citizen speak unrelated to, actually, because we closed the public hearing with exception of taking in additional document from the applicant's attorney and town council's comments.
That's right.
There will be no public opportunity to speak for the public hearing at Thayer Nursery. So if there's anyone who might want to speak to that, they should do it at Citizen Speak. So is there anyone here who would like to speak at Citizen Speak? Okay, seeing none, we will open the continued hearing for Thayer Nursery. We received by email the requested memo from Marion McKettrick, attorney, except for April. And given vacation schedules and some different attorneys attending different meetings and the need for those attorneys to speak, town councils, we do not have town council comments as of today. And that's why you didn't receive anything in advance. I spoke to Kevin Freitag just before, well, a few times, but just before the meeting today, and he has said that we will receive those hopefully Monday, but at the very latest Wednesday of next week, so that we'll have at least a week to consider them. And Bill has spoken with Marion about this, and it's understood that we're going to need to continue the hearing to take the town council comments in. So just for that limited purpose.
And but remind me what he was only going to be commenting on.
There's a few things in reviewing it that he's not quite ready, and therefore I'm not at liberty to, go into any detail about until they complete their review. So.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
And I talked to him about that, and I said, we've had a lot of back and forth, and you'll see when we discuss it next what's some of that.
Are we going to talk about it all today? Because I'd rather not.
No, I was
Okay,
planning
good.
just to continue,
All right.
because I think it's important for us to get their comments and to have
Do it all in
Kevin be
context.
here.
Is this, because, not being nasty to them, but He said that last time, so they will have it next? Because if they don't, I'd like to, I mean, I don't know that anything they say is going to change my opinion.
Well,
I think Cheryl's alluding to the fact that there may be a bigger issue we're not aware of yet.
Yeah, but they can't keep going this week after.
No, I agree.
It's got to be over now.
You're right, but knowing that there is a good chance that the decision will be appealed, we want to make sure that line by line, that
That's
we've
fine.
taken out anything that is going
This has been
to,
open, how many, a few months? Or a
Yeah.
couple months at least?
since June.
Okay,
But we
that's a
want to
long
make
time.
sure that line by line, that we're not setting ourselves up for
Get it? They've
something.
had since June.
I'm with you.
I'm with Rich.
You know,
That's a long time.
it doesn't, it's
Yeah.
not rocket science, they could have been
Yep.
doing this,
June.
as I know from being town council.
It's irritating to me because a lot of people are hiring lawyers to come in here week after week after week, and it's upsetting to me to
To
see
have
that
to see
happen
that.
when we're just sitting on it.
I agree.
well, I think.
I know you can't, I'm not, this isn't at you.
This isn't a Cheryl at
This
all.
isn't
This
a you
is
at all.
a long,
This is,
I mean, many of our permits are well supported and aren't challenged.
get
We
it.
know that there have been a lot of appeals of the zoning and of the land court decision is under appeal now. And so town council wants to make sure that the considerations of the decision from the land court are considered in the language of what we're considering, and felt as if it warranted adequate additional review, and not just by one town council. So there's,
I get
that's the best explanation that I can give you, and vacation schedules, because when I sent an email out last week asking all three where we stood with it, I got 2 back that said, I'm on vacation, you know, kind of that email. So it is the time of year too, unfortunately.
I drove
So-
5 hours back from vacation.
yeah. My
Because
kids
I
came
wanted
back
to-
to-
And you're not getting paid.
I
But that's
didn't-
okay.
And
That's
I
okay.
did, sorry about
Just
that,
a
but I
little- No, I
didn't
know.
know that that
No.
was going to be the case.
No, I don't think anybody's
Until
blaming you.
yesterday and today.
Yeah, no.
And so that,
I mean, I think
and it was
it's
too
important
late
to have finality.
to reconsider the meeting at all, you know.
No, it's not your fault.
No, I know.
But
Just-
we're,
So that's,
But you could express our dismay.
Yes.
our frustration.
okay.
I mean, it's not right to have any of the
I
parties
feel,
dragged
Come in
out
week after week.
I know. Especially something that's
Yeah.
sort of emotional.
yeah.
So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion.
Did we have the, you just want to repeat that we did get the materials that we expected from
Yes.
attorneys for the fairness?
Yes. And,
So that the only matter outstanding is the town council? Yes.
Yes.
So I would make a
part of
motion
your
to continue the hearing to September 12th at 7:15.
with the limited purpose of
Reviewing
receiving
town
town
council's
council's comments,
Yeah.
okay. Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go back to approval of minutes.
Oh, okay. I move to approve July 25th, 2019 as amended, and August 8th, 2019 as amended.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope. Other than it was a beautiful job.
Yeah.
Yes, well done, Julia. Nice amendments,
I
Kathleen.
wouldn't have wanted to have done
Cheryl.
that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. So, before we do the rules and regs, I mentioned about the potential for the zoning. And I wanted to also mention that Bill had been trying to reach, thinking of East Milton, been trying to reach a consultant that he and I both thought would be a good consultant for designing the community outreach that we discussed, that came out of the ULI Technical Assistance Panel report. So Bill finally was able to reach Judy Barrett today.
Oh,
and
She's very good.
yeah. And so, Bill, can you give us a little update about that, please?
I had a discussion with Judy to see if we could get her to come and facilitate discussion of an overlay for East Milton. The overlay discussion would take into account potential for 40R. The overlay for as much of East Milton as, you know, the maps and plans would allow. She'll have pictures that she'll take. She'll work with our GIS department to come up with the appropriate maps that she'll use. And we know that it would be at least 3 meetings, and it might even be to a 4th. The cost estimate is $15,000. She is really good at doing this. She's doing this exact same proposal in Brewster right now. She's done these all over the place, so I've seen her, I've heard her, I've worked with her before, and she's really good.
Is this the one we were talking about in the housing, affordable housing committee or housing committee, whatever? The select board committee?
No,
It's
No,
not the same person.
no.
no, this is a
Okay.
different person.
So I think she's very good too, but isn't $15,000 over the single source procurement limit?
No,
It's
I
not
thought
like-
anything over 10.
No,
it's not,
up
it's
to-
changed.
It's
Yeah,
up to
it just went up.
25.
Oh, yay.
There you go.
Well, if
My
you,
rates just went up? Perfect. I would be in favor of this. I know her work. She's very smart. So what is her deliverable? 3 to 4 meetings and then what? Some sort of,
I'll have something from her to do that. I needed to find out if we're interested in that and how far we'll go, when we'll do it. And it's beginning of October is what I gave her.
and she's available,
Yes.
so and how quickly would she be able to kind of map out a schedule? Probably not that difficult, maybe even in her proposal?
Yep.
Okay, great.
She was, she's finishing one of the legs of Brewster right now. She's finishing another report. This is the 3rd or 4th time that I've called, and every time I get her, she's either not in the office. Well, today I knew she was in the office, but she was just ridiculously busy. So I kind of guilted her into answering the phone, and
You can say, the
I know,
the chair
I
of the
know.
planning board's been hammering me about getting a hold of you, right?
no, I've known Judy for.
What would the plan
years.
be? Like
Yeah,
to,
could you remind us what the goals are?
The first part of it is to, I didn't bring the report with me, but remember, we talked about the first part is to do the community outreach so that there can be a consensus
Yep.
kind of gathered about what we want to consider, right? Because
Yeah.
right, there's been different ideas that were thrown out both in that report, but at other times about, is it 40R, you know, or is it a mixed use? Should boundaries be looked at because there's non-conforming uses? So, you know, there's businesses that are, probably most people don't realize are in the residential district. There's some suggestion of, I've forgotten one of the other things that we thought that the ULI folks recommended that we thought would take a lot of discussion, and I'm forgetting now
what do you think
the
the
other
plan,
one.
the timing would be?
Well, if she can start in October and she wants to do 3 or 4 meetings, I'm thinking that's a couple of months, right?
Yeah,
I
and
could
then
be
she has to do her sort of final report. I've worked with her on one of the early 40Rs in Kingston. She was sort of the land use consultant on that project. That was a pretty significant project, which unfortunately never went anywhere because of the economy. But, so I've worked with her, you know, on several projects.
Do you think that's a good
So I think she's an
timing?
excellent choice, and yeah, I mean, she does this as a living, so.
No,
it's
I
not
just
like-
mean if it's going to be outreach, is that a
Yeah.
good timing, October, December? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's always hard when you start to get into holiday season, getting members of the community to come to meetings and stuff like that. But, and I think, you know, those of us who live in East Milton kind of know that we really need to get a little bit more organized over there.
Yeah.
As to what's happening and where and why. And so this, I think, having her do the community outreach would be fantastic. I mean, she's really good at that.
So just to look at our calendar here, it looks like we're having 2 planning board meetings in September and 2 additional meetings for these other topics. And then
Right.
similar in October, we have 2 planning board meetings, and we also have the corridor study and the MPEC meeting. So,
Those are just for us to attend rather than have any action.
We're not-
Well, maybe
yeah.
we would
Yeah.
have some on the last one, right? Well, I'm saying we wouldn't have official action on them, whereas on the zoning pieces we would,
right.
most likely,
Yeah.
but.
Then in November, our public hearings start heating up in preparation for the January town meeting. So what about instead of October to December, January?
I'm concerned about, we've been waiting a long time for this. I'm concerned about having it, that report was delivered, well, they did their work and it was delivered in a presentation in January. Unfortunately, we didn't get the report until what, May?
Right.
So I'm concerned about having so much of a time, like I've received at least one email asking what's happening. I don't know if you who live in East Milton have heard from folks asking what's happening, if there's any follow-up, but we did have,
Nope.
I think someone attend not too long ago who asked about it at one of our meetings, but
You don't like to have it go too long because then people sort of think like, oh, well, the planning board, spent all this money on this or did this study and then once again didn't do anything with it. So,
Yeah.
2 stories on the front page of the paper is going to help push a little bit of
Yeah.
East Milton as a topic
yeah.
too.
Yep. Yeah, maybe the idea is you could reach out and find out if the dates are good, but at the same time, I'd imagine they're gonna want to reach out to the neighborhood associations and stuff like that to
Yeah,
get people.
I mean, yeah,
So maybe
all
they
of
could reach
it-
out to them too and see if,
It's
So-
all
Their
going to be
thoughts are-
subject to what she can get in
Right.
terms of,
Yeah.
locations and people and all that sort of stuff. So it's not in cement that, you snooze, you lose if you don't have a meeting by November.
right.
Right.
We could potentially try to push for the end
Yeah.
of September and
So
if we
one of
can
the
get
things
her-
I'll mention also is in terms of our attendance at all meetings wouldn't be necessary. Like when we did the master plan, there were a lot of meetings also, and we split them up and not everyone attended every meeting. So she's going to try and hit different times, I assume. Like one of the things that we did with the master plan was have a Saturday, have babysitting, which is what we talked about yesterday with the housing, because certain evenings don't work for everyone, and so, and childcare can be a concern for some in order to get the broadest outreach. So location of the meeting, as we've already talked about in other times, time of the meeting and day of the meeting, might mean that Rich attends one, Kathleen attends a different one. We'll have to figure that out in case
I
we
did-
need to post a meeting, but
Yeah.
I did bring up the idea that, yes, most of these probably are going to be during the week at night, but that might not preclude one of them from being on a Saturday.
I think one on a Saturday.
Makes
I mean,
sense.
that's what
If
we
you-
did for the housing forum. For as much as people don't like Saturdays, you do get a lot of people.
Well,
You have the potential to get a lot of
that
people.
consultant, Karen
Yeah.
Sunderberg, recommended the Saturday timeframe, right?
did.
Yeah. And I can say that it did make a difference to have childcare available. And when the master plan committee did it, it was through the childcare program at the high school. Those was high school
Oh,
students.
that's cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
getting community service.
Doing
thing,
community
yeah.
service hours, yeah. So, yeah, that's a
You
good.
saw my email yesterday.
Just wait till I get my.
I did not.
Is Judy Barrett with a firm? Could we
I
Google her?
think she's Community
has-
Opportunities Group.
Yeah, she's.
What you say the name was?
She's been
Community
in
Opportunities
No,
Group.
she's not with them anymore. She's on her own.
Barrett Consulting now,
Barrett
right?
Consulting out of
You can look her
Duxbury.
up, Denny. If you just
Okay.
Google her, you should find a
Yeah.
whole
Okay.
body of work. She's
Judy
been doing this
Barrett
for a
out of
long
Duxbury.
time.
yeah.
That's
Super, thank you.
She conducted some of the citizen trainer
She's
planning.
very much into that.
I've attended some of her sessions, and that's how I know who she is. These guys know her from other places, but, so we all know her from different places, and I really thought she was great. And that's why I suggested to Bill that that would be a good place to start.
The Department of Housing and Community Development used to have these pre-approved vendor lists for
Yeah,
cities and
right,
towns,
yeah.
so that you didn't have to go through procurement
Oh,
all the time.
okay.
And it was a great resource. I wish they would do it again, but she was on that.
She was
too.
on
On
that.
it, yeah.
So you know she's state endorsed
Yeah.
as well.
So I guess what we're looking for tonight is to have support from the planning board for Bill to reach out to her and to prepare a proposal with a schedule and deliverables and tasks.
And then we can review it.
And we can review it.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Yeah, she was a good pick.
Yep.
so do we have that support generally? Okay.
Yes.
Great. All right, so that, then for the other two articles that we had thought that we would do this fall, which was the planning board associate, and then the other one was just a correction for the wetlands, right?
I already have that all written. It's 2 sentences and it's ready to go.
Okay, and the associate, we had agreed we were going to resubmit the language that we had submitted previously, because the government study committee came to us and said that they supported it after they understood certain of the things that there was, though, the questions, is that what you're about to point to?
I was just gonna say, did we
Appointed
have-
versus elected?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do we want to discuss
I don't know
that
if we got
further
to the bottom
now?
of that. I don't remember where we left it.
Right.
Yeah, so,
I think we thought we were going to
yeah,
still discuss it,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, you had asked me to take a stab at it. So I had mentioned it at the last meeting that Situate had an elected, and they had a contested race. So there was some energy there. I think they did a longer term than 1 year. And that was another discussion point. I was, actually, when I looked at it, I called Wellesley, I did all this stuff. I was thinking, actually, if it was elected, maybe a 3-year would make it worth having to run that kind of a campaign. I actually asked Alex Whiteside to help me take a stab at it, because he's much better at this than I am, and take a stab at it as an elected, so I have some possible language. But I do know that there were a couple of different points we were trying to suss out last time.
Yeah, just my issue with the one was that part of the reason I thought, if maybe Cheryl or others that were thinking that as people come off, and things drag into to another year, there might be somebody there.
Kind of like Carberry when Brian was leaving.
Right.
It
We
gave
had
us a
hurry.
deadline. We had a hard deadline.
We got lucky that it ended around the same time. Or
Yeah.
else it could have been bad. But if we did it 1 year, that person's never going to be able to help with that.
Yeah, the concern about 3 years, that's the term now for planning board.
Oh, that's
so
right.
it's like, it's no different than
Right.
running for planning board to run for associate, so I don't know.
I'm not really in favor of the idea of having them elected. I mean, I like the Sudbury model instead, where they were appointed by the planning board. And so you appoint them when you need them. I don't see the issue of, I mean, having somebody as an associate member, you're only using them for limited purposes. Like, if they're not sitting here all the time on every meeting.
Right.
So going through the drill of having to run for office for something that you may never actually get to do doesn't make any practical sense to me. That it should be that we have the ability to appoint, get a volunteer like the Sudbury thing. They had that form and, all that sort of thing. And the planning board.
Which is what would happen if in this approach, that would happen if nobody ran.
Right.
But as I said, I'm not so sure I want to set up a hurdle of having somebody have to run around and get all the signatures and go through the drill of, running on a ballot for something that they will never get to do in the 2 years that they've been
That brings up
elected.
a good point, though. So my question would be, I don't know if maybe Bill knows or somebody that's been here longer than a term or two, but like how often would this help us, or would it have ever helped us, or do other towns, like, does it help them? Like, do they actually use those people?
Yeah, it hasn't really been an issue in my 2 years. I did reach out to 2 prior board members, and they didn't see it as an issue in their, in their stretch. It's really an issue if somebody has trouble making the meetings, that's an issue. or somebody has needs to recuse themselves.
Or you have a conflict, yeah.
Then that's an issue. So those are the times that it comes up. But those are the only times.
And this is
we've
only
always
for a
been-
special permit, right?
It's only for a special
Correct.
permit.
How often do we have a special permit consideration on our agenda? Half
I
the
think
time?
it goes more to the length of time that the special permit takes to come to fruition. When you look at something like there, a year and a half. So it became an issue of, you can only miss a meeting, you can't miss more. So it's work schedules, it's, special vacations, it's sicknesses.
So that sort of backs up Rich's point, though, if it's a year and a half process, if you only have a year appointee, it's not
Doesn't
really
help.
helping. And you're right about the whole transition piece.
Yeah.
If somebody
it's that
gets cycled
person.
off.
Well, the other problem is,
Everybody
is
gets-
you
somebody
have
gets
to know
cycled
ahead
up
of
every
time
year.
that here comes a long one.
Well, that's what I was just
That
going to say.
person's going to have to come on and not miss any either.
Well, one thing to consider is have it be a different start date term, because one of the things that you run into is this, like if you have right now, an applicant, if they think they're going to have a fairly lengthy, they have to think about a year-long process anyway, because there could, unless they assume people are going to get reelected, then it's going to be a changeover and the new person. So that's what happened when I first came on. I was the new person there, and I participated a long time. I think it was on the zoning, actually, not on the actual special permit. But it was I didn't get to vote in the end, but I spent a lot of time thinking about it and working on it, and it required, the other members. So that's the other thing too, is timing. So if to all of your points, is if maybe it would be, 6 months after the April election, so that you can kind of
January to
have
January or
yeah, something, yeah.
So I just want to make a point that a year and a half special permit process is way too long.
Yeah,
It
that's,
shouldn't go any longer than 6 months at the longest. That's a
Yeah.
pretty extensive benchmark, so.
and I kind of felt like when we knew Brian was leaving, it gave the Carberry, it gave us a deadline. Otherwise, we could still be working on that. You know what I mean? Not that any of us wanted us to.
I think we all would have quit by then.
We all like.
But an election is that anyway, because you don't, even if someone chooses to run, you don't know if they're going to win.
That's
Right.
true.
So an election, so that's what I meant by timing. So like somebody who's going to file a special permit and thinks it's going to take 6 months can't file after June or maybe July or whatever it is, so it does kind of set us up for certain kinds of schedule of our applications.
So, I don't see any harm at all in trying it. I don't know how applicable it's going to be, but you never know. If it works once, is it worth it? Probably. I don't really have a strong feeling either way about elected or appointed. I think there's good points on both sides. I do think the off-cycle timing of it, though, would help
Yep, yeah.
with a lot of the issues that we're outlining. If it was January 1 to December 31, that would probably be most applicable, actually. But I think it's a good idea to try it. I don't see any harm in trying it. And if we don't end up using it, then we can change it back or just not fill the position.
Yeah, that's why I think the idea of having it be appointed, not elected, is that you can choose not to do it.
If you have it appointed, it's always going to favor the majority. And because the majority is going to decide.
Well,
And so
how do you,
So if you have a majority, that gives the majority the leg up on creating the bench for future electeds. Because we're all elected, except for this one position is appointed by the majority. So the majority is almost handpicking the next generation
well,
of
in some
elected.
situations, the associate member isn't appointed by the planning board, it's appointed by the Board of Selectmen. You could have somebody else do the appoint. You could have the moderator appoint, like the moderator appoints the ZBA members.
Our current language that we submitted before was an appointment by both boards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd like that.
But
I don't mind if it's
Okay.
both boards. I definitely don't want the moderator just picking somebody
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a little technical.
This is an
especially if
elected
somebody's
position,
just-
and
Yeah.
if you're voting on these things,
Yeah.
So my thing is like,
If you're just
I'm
swooping
kind
in,
of a little
need some sort
on
of
both sides of all of this, but with the whole, I guess my stopping point is the elected, non-elected. I see the merits of both, but I also don't think that I guess I'm internalizing this with myself. I don't think it's fair to the people that voted, say me in, for me to say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to make the time to get to all these meetings, so why don't you go do it? And they didn't vote that person in. That's just on me, and that's just what's in my head. So that's why I'm struggling.
It's not about changing responsibilities, it's about allowing the work of the board to
Or
get
to
done more
continue.
efficiently.
Well, that's why my question was, how often is this
Yeah.
ever needed? If
Well,
it's once
I
in 20
I
years-
have run into it.
Okay.
I don't know how often I don't know
Yeah.
that it's ever happened here, but I have run into it in other towns.
Okay, though, that's good.
Where, we've had a situation where, because of illness, a serious illness, we couldn't get a quorum. So the planning board, stopped for months. Because we didn't have a majority, we couldn't have a majority, so we couldn't vote. I mean, the thing is, the associates can sit there and they can participate in discussions on site plan review and, all that stormwater stuff. I mean, they can sit there if they want, but when you have a special permit, they need to be appointed to be on the special permit.
I can tell you too that a few years ago now, I had 2 family members who were quite ill, and my family members don't live anywhere near here, so I had to do a lot of traveling, and some of it at the very last minute. And so, if you're saying you can't make the time or commitment, it's not about making the time or commitment. You have to choose your commitment. And if you have, your parent, in their last days, you're going to choose to go see your parent in their last days.
Yeah.
And that might mean you've missed your second meeting. So
Yeah.
these things, they don't happen a ton, but
But when they do-
But when they do, they can be.
So
Yeah.
that's good information. I mean, because what I was thinking before was, is this a once in 20-year issue, and are we fixing a problem that doesn't need to be fixed? But it sounds like there's issues that could, I get those ones. So I have another, just thinking out loud here. It's pretty strict when we vote on these, right? You have to have 5, it's like, what is it, 4 out of?
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5?
On a special
So can we
permit,
make, the planning board be the one that votes this person in if it's not elected but chosen, but it be a 4 out of 5 type of a...
A
supermajority.
supermajority.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very good idea. Because I
good
think
idea.
that resolves
And it's not
Dennis'
just 3 out
concern.
of 2.
Yeah,
your
a
issue.
supermajority
Yeah.
chooses
good idea.
the,
Yeah.
okay.
That's a very good
Okay.
idea.
Because then it's because I envision somebody coming in that really wants to be involved, and us all probably saying, hey, this sounds great, and all 5 of us are, but to your point, if there was something, not to say it's this group, but something
Yeah.
crazy going on, well, then you could kind of stand up and say, you know what,
I
I'm
think
not
that's a
voting.
great idea.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
too.
I like that idea.
Okay.
So I'm concerned about 3 years, which is what you recommended, Denny, because it's a 3-year term now. When we had 5-year terms,
I wouldn't
then
do it. I would do
I
it.
was
do
just
2
going to
years
say, I
at
don't know
most.
if you would commit.
Yeah.
Would you do a 1-year or a 2-year?
I don't know.
The staggered is kind of nice, then it helps.
Well, they're only one.
We could try it on a 1-year staggered and then see how it goes.
Do you mean the staggered term?
A staggered term.
Yeah, so you mean starting
Sorry.
in January instead of May or whatever?
Yeah.
If you're,
That could help.
You can do it whenever you want.
Your issue is a good issue. How does that help us? I'm just looking at Carberry, okay? So we started Carberry in November, so we have a new associate starting in January.
They can't be on it because they weren't there when that permit opened.
they missed the beginning.
Right, but now we're down an associate because Carberry started in November.
No, we're not down an associate. Because the associate can't be on that one. Because Carberry already opened.
So then we don't have the luxury of having, so then Brian's
Wouldn't
leaving
have
in
had an
April.
associate for Carberry.
So then
if
it
the
wouldn't have helped
appointment
us
was in
with
January.
it wouldn't have helped us with the election.
Why couldn't we do like a 1 year but can be extended for multiple years? So that way you get the best of both worlds.
That's not a bad idea either.
Yeah.
So if they're in the middle of an application instead
We
of.
can extend
Just-
it.
you
can
just
extend
And
it.
they have an appetite to
You can just
stay.
keep renewing.
Yeah,
Whatever.
all right,
All right,
so,
so 1 year
This is
renewable.
completely different than everything. So
okay. So we're going to do appointed by supermajority of planning board, right?
Yep.
Which I like a lot better than giving it to somebody else to appoint.
Right.
Yep.
yeah.
And we want a 1-year term
Does that
with
go
an
against
option
our charter,
to extend.
What's that?
We do that?
charter, our general bylaw?
1-year
Of
term?
what, the planning board?
No,
Oh,
regular committees.
What about?
What aspect do you think?
Other committees, there's a lot of times you have to have both. What's that blue book?
They'll have to have both.
Selectmen always get a bite of that apple.
I don't see why. There's
One-year
many that
term.
just,
No, but the thing is that we're drafting a
Right, so you can have a
bylaw.
special
That would
one.
override.
We're already override the general bylaw by drafting a new bylaw.
Okay.
So we have the, and then, so what do we think
General
about the
bylaw.
staggered? Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Not
Given-
I think we should do it the regular
not part
time.
of 10.
Keep it April then?
Yeah,
All right,
whenever we
so
constitute
It's
a
a
new
general
board.
bylaw of the town.
Whenever we do that. All right, so we'll
And then you
keep
can
it at
just renew it.
April. All right,
makes sense.
so the
This is
timing
renewable.
won't be the same
Yeah,
as
no, the
the
general
election.
bylaw of the town.
Because you're right, applicants are gonna game the
Yeah.
system. So they're not gonna apply in March when they know that their board might turn over in
Right.
April.
Right.
Not game the system, but be a
Right,
little more
they're gonna try to
strategic
plan.
about
Well,
it.
you know, as I said, most of the,
Poor choice of words.
the ones that I've looked
most
at,
cases.
you know, the planning board announces that they're going to, like, accepting applications.
Yeah,
So do we even have to say what time?
No,
Oh, yeah, we can just be
makes
silent
sense.
on when that happens.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't think you have to set up a specific time
Okay.
of year when you need it. I mean, I think you could be saying to yourself, we want to have the ability to do it, but we're not going to be
Forced.
compelled to do it.
Right, so there's no reason to put it in the
Then
bylaw
you don't
itself.
necessarily need a
then.
term.
It's a general
It could be
bylaw under
per-
chapter 11.
No, you would do, but you would do it for a year.
Oh, it is
you
a
know.
general bylaw?
It's a general
Once a-
bylaw under
once-
chapter 11.
So we
Right
need the
now,
selectmen to endorse
Once
the
Section
appointed,
bylaw.
it's a year.
A planning board is hereby established under provisions of general laws, chapter 41, 81A, and any amendments thereto with all the powers and duties therein and any existing bylaws of the town provided to consist of 5 members. That was in March 1939 for a term of 1 year.
Yeah, right.
We changed ours, so there's a change in
Yeah.
ours that went to 3
Change it,
years.
right.
So you would have a section 1A, which will be the
11-1A?
Yeah, chapter 11, section 1 would be amended by adding a provision allowing the planning board to appoint an associate member from time to time. I mean, I don't think we, you know, I think you would be saying you'd want to have the ability to do it, but I wouldn't make you do it every year.
Right.
You might not need somebody.
But you'd probably put the language in there to say that once appointed
Yeah,
for 1
they-
year,
yeah,
but they could be renewed.
With renewals,
Yeah.
yeah. But as I said, I don't see the point of compelling you to
Right.
do an associate.
That makes sense.
I get it. All right, so I think we have consensus of what we'd like to do. Denny, do you think you can work
Well,
on it, or would you like Kathleen to work on it, or you want Bill to work on it? What do you think?
I also want to hear from the public, because I have a feeling if the public cares like I care about the elected aspect of this, then I may not be in support. But
We will hear from them when we have the
yeah.
warrant.
So I'm just saying, I am not
Uh-huh.
confirming that I'm supporting this until I've heard from the public on that. So,
Okay, so in terms of who wants to look at the draft language on it,
Let me do it.
we'll let our attorney do it.
our attorney Kathleen, or our
Let's, I shouldn't say
counsel?
our, it's not the town council, but
Right.
the attorney that's a member of the
The
board.
unpaid town council.
Thank you for your work on it, Denny.
Sure, sorry, didn't get us further.
No, you brought up.
You
good
did.
Oh,
points.
hey, look, it's good for discussion.
Yeah, you brought up all those points that we were able to talk out.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
Did you have, was there any others though that?
Let's see, I mean, I think we touched on all of it. From Alex, I got it was chapter 10 of the general bylaws, known as the zoning bylaw, by adding a new subsection E to section 8 to be entitled planning board associate. That's weird.
I'll take a look to see where other places have put it, but it has looked to me, the ones I've seen have been amendments of the general bylaw.
Okay,
So chapter 11, as Bill had pointed out.
Well, can you send, again, circulate what had been put together as, I think there was a little bit of research you or Lauren did with Brian on this.
Yep.
And
when
I
this was put
do want to
together.
note that the Government Study Committee did not seem to be attached to elected or appointed.
Right.
They just want one.
They thought it was a good idea
Okay.
in concept, but this has come up twice before, and it's been sent back for study twice before and I think the sticking issue was elected or non-elected.
Yeah, so I had that same issue, but I mean, as long as everybody else agreed, I like the idea of that supermajority. I like the time limit, like all those extra add-ins that we did. I think it makes
Okay.
sense, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Rich, because when I first joined the board, that we discussed this, and I had the exact same comment as you. It's like, why is this necessary?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
actually, since then, we haven't had any like big snafus, but
Right,
we
right.
have had some challenges of like, we got to make sure this person can get there, and Brian's traveling, and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
So that's why I'm
You
like,
brought up
yeah,
really good-
Vacation
The 2
and-
points that I heard, just a little bit, those do happen, and I wouldn't want somebody to look at me funny if I had to go visit a family member.
right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had one, you
Yeah.
know, where I was representing a client and, you know, the planning board didn't meet for 3 months.
I flew back after my mother's funeral to come to a Thayer Nursery public hearing,
Yeah,
2 days after my mom's funeral. So, it does happen.
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Cool.
All right, so the wetlands one is not anything really for us to have discussion over. The Milton Village, we can decide once we have the public meeting whether we think that is going to be ready, but I can definitely tell you that the committee, the master plan committee, is ready to turn it over to us. And then we can decide if it will be ready or not.
Okay.
Anything else on, then I think what we could do is talk a little bit about just what we think we might want to do for May. And I think we talked about the traffic mitigation as one. And then, Bill, did you know, we also talked about the conversion of large homes potentially to condominiums if they're on a smaller than 2-acre site. The Historic Commission, I know, was looking into whether there were properties they viewed as at risk of whether, because demolition or,
I asked them if they had that list and they didn't.
they don't, okay. So there's nothing pressing about that. I know the Housing Committee that Melinda chairs is.
I know a couple of people
are
that
very
would like to
interested
be
in
able to
accessory
use
dwelling.
it right now.
Oh, you do? On the condo conversion one?
Yeah.
A couple of, what are they doing with the properties they have right now then, if they're waiting for that? Or they don't have it
They're-
as an option?
You know, one is, really wants to have one, he'd like to redesign the building.
You have a list that,
Yeah, I was looking for, I had,
that is pink, the stripes on it.
yeah, I did see that. Maybe
And I
it's
was
hiding
jumping
anywhere.
around from memory, but we can go through it by list.
The pink one, the purple one, we'll get to in a couple minutes, the pink one.
Share yours.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what
The
happened
pink
to
one.
mine. Oh, sure, thank you.
So wetlands, we talked about, we're on condo conversion.
Oh,
We
before I
mentioned-
forget, oh,
Yeah.
signs, it's there. Never mind,
Yeah.
carry on.
The condo conversion, we talked about the fact that you have to have a 10-acre minimum, but you, some cases it could be 5, Bill, is that right? Or is it always 10?
It's a outstanding project.
Okay. But we know of some properties that are like on 2 acres, huge houses.
120 Central Ave came before this board before, and they were asking to try to do that. 120 Central would have, they were asking for 3 units. If they had come and asked for 2, they probably would have gotten it. Instead, they were asking for 3, which was raising hackles. They went to the zoning board of appeals, and at the last minute, the deal fell apart, and it's back to being a single. But there's several houses in that neighborhood on Central Ave. These are 14,000 square foot houses, and there's no real reason that they couldn't be subdivided into units, individual units, which would then allow money to be put into the property for upkeep of the building itself. It's really difficult to get somebody to buy a 12 to 15,000 square foot house, and it doesn't have multiple acres. It's kind of a tight neighborhood. It's an option.
Did that property on Central Ave ever get converted?
No, they sold it as a single-family home.
And is somebody occupying it as a single-family house?
Yes.
And the same thing
They-
happened with the one on Brush Hill Road, right? That was
they-
on the market for a long time, and then it went to single-family?
There's some issues with that house, and it's not, it's being used as a single-family house, but it's pushing the boundaries.
And the house, sometimes what's happened, I think, is that there's been like Airbnb activity on a large house because,
Sure. Yeah. 'Cause
you
can.
know, because they're big. So, you think you know of
I don't
two-
know that condo conversion would change that. I mean, I think Airbnb is a big thing across the country. People are trying it all different types of properties, big and small.
But I think if you're thinking about saving, you know, the houses that make Milton so special, that saying that you can only do a condo conversion when it's got 10 acres, you know, is really a pretty
Arbitrary.
high bar.
Show me the 10-acre lots. We just don't have those.
Yeah, I mean, what are we talking about?
We had
houses
one
that
come
had 10
to us,
acres?
and I feel like we did approve it.
That's the one on Central, but it didn't, and we supported it and went.
Yeah.
And
It was
then
a ZBA question,
ZBA
though, right?
question, yeah.
It wasn't
Because that
ours.
wasn't 10 acres.
It wasn't
Yeah,
10
that
acres.
wasn't-
That's why
we
we
had-
couldn't,
We had access. and
Oh.
So they'd have to do a variance.
They had to go
So
for
they had to do a
variance.
variance.
Yeah, which
And
is
then
a
it just-
higher bar than a special permit.
And one of the neighbors had an issue with it, and it fell apart.
Oh, is that what happened?
yeah.
I thought that was an A&R for some reason. Didn't they
That
try
was a
to do that?
potential for that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, this is the challenge, is that, you know, when there's a property like that, what this, and I toured that. And
Yeah,
it
we did a
was,
site walk too.
We
didn't
did a site walk.
I went, did you go inside that too?
No.
I did go inside it, and that needed a lot of work. And it probably hadn't been used truly as a single family either, the way it looked. So that becomes the challenge, you know, is you think, okay, well, we're going to keep these single family, but the reality is not too many families have a third floor for staff anymore.
Yeah.
The one on Brush Hill Road, when I toured that, it was like, you could have a bowling alley in here, you could have 20
yeah.
staff, you
Yeah.
could have, I mean, it just, like, you can't imagine, there are some people who, single families, they'll have that size, but the majority do not.
No.
And the worry is if, you know, what do you do with those? And the thought was that if there are, and a lot of them are older, so if it's the historic aspect of them that's valuable, you know, is there a way to bring that from 10 acre down? I mean, the whole idea about this condo conversion when it was done was the same purpose. It's just that it only applies on a very large parcel.
Some of that type of restoration work costs a third more than if they had torn it down and built it brand new.
Right.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's
Oh,
a
yeah, yeah,
matter
yeah.
of.
No, there's no
Because
question
there's
about it.
abatement and
how do
everything
you
else. I
help-
mean, this.
How do you help save that? And that may be that you allow a subdivision of the piece of property itself, the house itself.
Is
But
there,
would it be useful, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, is there an opportunity to map this in GIS to see
Well,
how
that's what I'm
many of
just
these
thinking.
houses are?
Yeah, how many, you know, with the
10 acres
historic
versus
commission?
5 acres
The
The
versus.
Historic Commission is working on that, I mean, but that is their charge.
Yeah, but it's not that complicated, I
Well, that's
would
what I'm
think.
thinking. I would think you would just set
Could-
certain.
Can we ask
So
them
what
to have it
what
by
are
a
you
date?
proposing instead of 10 acres?
That's what
Well,
I'm
I
trying to
think we
see.
need to know what the story is.
Right,
Is,
okay.
Many
is to say, how many, Chris, how many of 10 acres? We probably have like 2, you know,
Yeah.
but
But I can think of a lot of 5 acres.
Well, so
and
that's
it
what I
would
mean.
change-
We
it would
need-
completely change, like Hillside, Green Street, Harlan, like it would completely change all those if you were like, okay, 5 acres you can condo, then it would be like there'd be condos, like,
well, not necessarily. I mean,
not necessarily, but if, when you do the build out, because you have to imagine, so,
but we've also said in here that it has to be a building older than 1980. So, and 10 acres with 150 feet of frontage. And so we have some requirements as to what those could be, but I think we need to know from the historic people
how many?
what we would be possibly talking about.
Right, that, I think you're absolutely right. We need to know, is this
Yeah.
20 or is this
And
200?
I mean, we could also look at square footage and put in
Yeah,
a minimum
right,
square
yeah.
footage requirement if we felt like
Yeah.
that would make a difference. But I do feel like we need some data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause otherwise
And-
we're
And
sort
then
of
we almost
guessing.
have to look neighborhood by neighborhood, like what this would mean for these neighborhoods that would be most impacted, because that's what you would find, a lot of, you know,
Well, yeah, except but what you worry about is that somebody has a beautiful old house
Yeah.
that we love because of the neighborhood, and they say, I'm blowing this out.
Well, I
Bulldoze it
mean,
and
think
put in
about that on
four
a 10
McMansions.
acre. You could
Yeah.
blow it out and then subdivide it
It
into
into-
these new houses in a typical subdivision. Then you lose the house with the land around it. But
Yeah.
even that one on Central, you could have built 2 houses on that property, depending upon the consideration of the frontage, right? And is that better than keeping the
It's
existing?
older than maybe 1980s too new.
Yeah.
We want
I
to
think-
push
Yeah,
it back.
Probably.
If you're
Maybe,
thinking
yeah.
about saving the historic fabric of the town, maybe 1980s too generous, you want to pull that back, but you'd get them on smaller lots. So, I mean, I don't think everybody in Hillside's suddenly deciding, okay, fine, I'm doing a condo.
no, I mean, what you would find, like the old Milton Muse, like a lot of the properties around that Milton Muse, right? You could say, oh, well, they could just knock them down and put something else in. But they don't, because they're worth too much. They're worth too much to knock down and build something new. What they have is already pretty valuable. So I understand the sentiment, but I also haven't seen the house where it would necessarily apply. Like the grand estate that,
Well, we've had
Nobody knocks
something
it down.
before us with
Yeah.
at the ZBA,
Okay.
which was a smaller house with a carriage house.
yep,
And so it had always had an apartment in it, in the carriage house. Now, that would have been, so we went through all kinds of machinations on the ZBA to come up with a way to regularize that situation. But if they could have said, okay, fine, it's not 5 acres, I mean, it's over, near East Milton, so it's a smaller lot, but, beautiful carriage house, beautiful house, Victorian. Could you do that? You would do that as condos in most other towns. And,
so it's a house and a carriage house, and they're on one lot.
Yeah.
So could you subdivide?
no, because
you
you wouldn't
can't.
comply with zoning.
Okay, because it
So-
didn't have frontage or
Yeah,
something.
right, not enough frontage, not enough lot area, et cetera, et
Okay.
cetera, et cetera. When you're doing a condominium, you're not subdividing anything. You have
Putting
the
them together.
parcel, and you're creating units on the parcel.
I would actually, I've been thinking about all these like 2-lot subdivisions and building these roads with cul-de-sac and how contrary that is to the historic fabric. I actually was been thinking we should consider condo for sites because then you're looking at, I mean, I live on a shared roadway that looks like a lane and there's 10
Yeah.
homes there, but it allows it to be more, people come there and they don't realize how close it is here to Town Hall. They think it's somewhere further out. But it's because we didn't have to build that road.
Right.
And think about historically, multiple homes, Town Farm, on a parcel that not everyone has their own frontage.
No.
I mean, that way of, that land plan thinking is 1950s, 60s, 70s. It's not now. And yet we've got that frontage thing that dictates how our land planning goes. And well, the roadways are another thing.
Talk about it in a few minutes.
That's another thing, but I mean, even, so the condo idea, where you have the 2 with
Yeah.
the carriage house, I like hearing that should be a condo, because that's what I'm thinking for some of these properties would allow certain things to be much nicer character-wise.
Well, I mean,
Physical.
it's one of those situations where we always talked about, like, in Carlisle, we did accessory units, Situate, we did accessory units to provide a way for providing different housing stock and to also provide income for an older family that lives in the house. So you could have a separate, carriage house or a separate, building, but we don't allow that. We allow it only if it's a family member, and you have to be able to you don't change anything on the outside of the house. I mean, all of our restrictions on accessory structures are really tough. But if we're also making it hard for people to save these lovely old Victorians, and you're right, I mean, who's doing the servants area up on the 3rd floor? You wish you could get a servant or pay for one, but you can't.
Well, and
Could the date be wrong, that it's 100 years, not 1980.
Well, that's what we're
Well,
saying.
I
As
think
said,
I
is
think
it-
1980 is too
Is
too
too recent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so-
Age, not by the
There's only been like
parcel.
20 houses built since then.
Not mine.
I think the whole idea that, in my mind, anyway, for this would be for historic property.
Yeah.
So what a lot of what was built in Milton was done before 1930. But maybe we could ask the Historical Commission what they think is an appropriate, what was it for the 2-year delay? They have a date.
It was 75 years old.
75, so it's what, 47?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
75
so if you
years.
had it tied into the demolition delay kind of timing, that makes a lot of sense. 1980, I think, I think Denny's right. I think that's too recent.
That's a little young.
So what do we think? We know we want Historic Commission data. Who do we think should follow up with them?
Do they have staff?
No.
No, it's volunteer.
I mean, is this something you can do, Bill? In GIS?
I think we could give the list to the Historic
Intern or
Commission and
something?
Yeah.
have Alan
What
work
I'm
with
most
us.
curious about is what are the grand estates that are at risk? Could we get a sense from someone, maybe you, maybe the historic
I
commission?
think if we
What are
just-
the ones that are at risk?
We wouldn't necessarily know. I think we need
Yeah.
to sort of set what's the criteria? So what do we have that's something sitting on 5 acres, or let's say,
5 acres or more.
Well, you could get the 5-acre kind of lot sizes.
think
But
with
you can do
GIS.
that, but then there's assimilation. I mean, Mr. Carberry took and bought a
Yeah.
bunch of properties that had already at one time been together, and he took and he assembled them together.
yeah,
And then he turned around this whole thing as one giant lot.
right.
So if you don't have 10 acres now, you buy the guy next door, now you've got your 10 acres. No one saw that coming. No one saw that you're going to put those pieces together.
Yeah.
The Milton Muse, no one saw that they were going
No,
to all of
nobody
a
saw
sudden
that.
reach and start grabbing. And,
But that's that's the risk of, so like
But
there was
that's
a condo
anywhere.
bylaw that a citizen put before a town meeting. Remember this years ago? It was a citizen bylaw. And then there was another condo bylaw that was being floated, and it was through assemblage. If you got 2 properties on either side of you, and you could do condos all over town on the main routes, on 138, that one didn't make it to town meeting. Both of them, well, the other one was sent back for further study. It was the risk was through assemblage. It would impact, I'll look it up. But it
Well,
was,
I just said, if
Oh,
we,
sorry.
I think we really need to get a list from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I understood that the Historical Commission was working on that, so maybe an email.
to Steve.
Steve, we can see where that is. Maybe they don't have full capacity over the summer. Some people may not even be in Milton in the summer. I know that they have an interest in tools to help save historic properties, and
Yeah.
I view this as that kind of a tool. So let's see where they are with it.
But I don't think it's particularly well directed towards, as it's currently drafted,
Yes.
towards
I
saving
agree.
historic properties.
right.
So if that's what we'd like to do, then I think we could touch this a little bit.
I think you're on the right path to try to figure out what needs to be saved, and then
See if it makes sense.
if it
Yeah.
makes sense. See if this makes sense.
Okay,
Okay.
so on the accessory dwelling, which you mentioned, Kathleen, I know that that's something that will come up in the housing production plan, and it is something that I believe the Housing Committee is talking about. So I think we should see what comes out of their recommendations for this, because moving forward on something will be our responsibility, really. But where they're working on housing, I know this is something that they're working on.
Okay, but there's one little
Okay,
fix
sure.
that we should think about.
Okay,
Is that our present bylaw says that you have to have the house, and then you can take part of it and make it an accessory dwelling. So what we've had before the ZBA any number of times, usually represented by Ms. Attorney McKettrick, is somebody who's doing a whole rehab of the house and wants to create an accessory dwelling at the same time. And that's not permitted under our zoning. You
requires
have
a
to
variance.
build the house and then rehab it, whatever, and then do your accessory dwelling, rip it all out, rip the part of it out, and then build your accessory dwelling, accessory unit, which is crazy. So that's why you have to keep coming to the ZBA, going through the whole drill of trying to get a variance to allow the construction of the accessory unit to be simultaneous with the rehab of the rest of the dwelling.
I
So
can tell you, I
even a
have,
little fix would help.
I
They
can
would
tell
have to
you
do the
too,
ZBA.
I've been involved in 2 in Milton. Both were women who had been recently widowed, were living in their homes alone, and they wanted to do an accessory dwelling unit, and it needed to come with an addition. And their adult child and their family were going to be moving into the main house, and they were
Yeah.
going to move into the addition. It's stressful because of what you say. It's not there already. Like one was in a Residence C district, so that their lot sizes are fairly small anyway. So it had to fit. You had to build it with a garage, and part of the accessory dwelling unit was behind the garage and some of it on top. But they have to be connected, and they have to be entered separately, but then can be joined later. And when you have a tight site, some of these things are really very challenging to work out design-wise. And then, do they connect on the right place, on the right floor? Because it doesn't make sense later to convert them back to the family without, when it's not accessory. It's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, and in both of those, Marion was the attorney, and she got them, successfully through. But what she did was to say it would be a hardship to
Yeah.
build it first,
Right.
and then have to come back because you're getting your loan, and the way things work in construction is not in line with the bylaw.
Right.
So she said, and in both cases successfully, but
Yeah.
it requires the ZBA to say, and the homeowner has to say they have a hardship,
Right.
which is not really the case. They don't really have,
And
because it
yeah,
doesn't make sense.
I mean, that's the hard thing, because variances by law in Massachusetts are not supposed to be handed out willy-nilly. You're supposed to be really making an argument. So, for the most part, you're kind of saying here, well, as long as nobody in the neighborhood stands up and starts to say, this is a problem, then okay, we'll work with it. But it causes a huge issue with the ZBA because, as Cheryl said, you're not really got a hardship.
And one of them,
Yeah.
one of the neighbors, was not supportive of a necessary variance for a minor setback.
Yeah.
And it required a redesign to remove
Right.
that variance and a
Stop asking
sacrifice,
that, yeah.
a sacrifice in the layout of the
Right.
property and more expensive design to do it because so there are, I think you're right, there's definitely improvements to the
Even if you're
existing,
not
even if you
thinking
don't
about
change anything else.
doing the whole the whole accessory unit issue over again, which clearly needs some work. But just this minor fix of saying that it doesn't have to be, in an existing dwelling, that you could do it simultaneously with a rehab of the dwelling. A tiny fix like that would help.
Right, I think that too. And I think, in talking with Joe Prondak, he would probably have some guidance too,
Yeah.
because he's the one who has
Yeah,
to,
that would be
he
good
talks to the homeowners when they come in. In fact, one of one of the brokers in town called me one time and said, can you give me a primer on how the accessory dwelling works? Because I have people who, they're moving in and their mother or whomever is moving with them and they want to be able to do this. And I said, oh yeah, and they want to do it how soon? Because you going for variances and waiting out the legal challenge period and then applying, you're not going to want to spend the money on your full drawings until you got the variance, and then, but it takes time. And, that impacts somebody's decision. So there's plenty of information about how it's frustrating for people. So how do we want to do it? Does everybody agree that kind of, we can tackle that part outside of whatever else is recommended by the Housing Committee?
I have no problem with that.
think it's interesting. I hadn't thought of any of the issues because I hadn't been on the ZBA. We're watching close enough. Because it hasn't come before, so I don't know. Can you think of any issues? Like, so,
You still have to get, the process doesn't change other than.
the difference is.
yeah, no, it
Can I just
doesn't-
ask, the difference would be that they could walk in with a plan and say, this is what it will look like in the end, as opposed to, it's already in existence, we're just going to change it.
Well,
The bylaw right now
Yeah.
requires that you build it within the existing
Dwelling.
building. So most of them don't work for that. So then somebody builds the addition, and then
have
they
to
say
get-
it's existing dwelling, then they go back and ask to do it. But meanwhile, it's out of
Yeah.
sequence with their construction. Because most people, their homes are not designed to be set to immediately convert. Oh, I've got this perfect spot to convert it to an accessory apartment within my existing house.
Right.
I mean, think about your own homes. Would you be able to say, I don't need this part of the house and it's perfectly suited to convert
No.
to an accessory apartment? I don't,
no, no.
doesn't
I
happen.
put a in-law addition on my house in Hanover, but they wouldn't let me call it an in-law addition for 10 years.
Really?
Because-
my God.
Yeah, because they didn't want you making two families, is what
Yeah.
what they didn't want that to happen. So if you use it for 10 years, then you can grandfather it in. I had no intentions of condo or anything, but 10 years, then you really meant it.
Yeah.
You're not just trying to, because people want to flip property. So what they could say is, oh, I've got one house now for a single family. If I, carve it up, sell, I leave with a profit, and I leave the neighborhood with a mess,
Well,
so.
the way Milton's is,
Yeah,
you have a
yeah.
renewal every 5 years.
Yeah.
And if the person or
the
persons
person
move
dies,
out
yeah.
or dies, then it has
have
to
to take it
revert
out?
back.
Reverts back,
You
yeah.
have to take
And
out the kitchen.
You have to take
yeah.
out the kitchen, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
Yeah.
it's very restrictive for that reason. My understanding is, I wasn't here when it was put in place, but that there's a concern about having singles turn to two families. But if you one of the things the two examples that I gave you is what worked. Those families liked was that it's company. The younger generation is company for the widow, and also the widow helps with childcare for the younger family. And if you think about that if that's what you're trying to accomplish, you can't. If somebody's, the window of time to do these can't be like a 10-year period. You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
I'm not
you
saying
have to wait
that
10 years before you
Hanover is
have
the right way. I'm
an
not saying
elderly person who's
Yeah,
sick,
right,
I'm just saying that I think Hanover, I know that Hanover was trying to discourage, developers from looking at a house going, I can carve that out, leave a mess behind, but they made a profit. Do you know, like condo this, condo that, two-family this? So, but having said that, the idea that somebody could walk into ZBA with a plan as opposed to having something already grandfathered in or in structure, I think I'm okay with that. But I think Kathleen has more ideas, so.
I mean, as I said, it's just, I'm trying to find the specific language. It's just troublesome because it's sort of, you have to do it in an existing dwelling. And so if it's a house that you're now buying, with, your son and daughter-in-law and the baby, and you're going to buy it all together, and you got to do all the construction and rehab and then rip it out to put in the accessory unit, doesn't make much sense to me. So as I said, I think it's that kind of problem where it's,
But they would still
Yeah.
have to go and have it approved anyway to see if they could actually build right? I mean, what you're saying is you'd have to, even if you could do it at the same time, it'd still have to fall within the guidelines of
No
our
matter what, you have to go to the
bylaws.
Board of Appeal to
Yeah.
get the accessory dwelling unit
Right.
approved.
So they do the Board of Appeals does a special permit. And so you have a temporary apartment in it. And so the applicant has to be a part owner. So that sometimes is a question because people like to own things in trusts. So you
Yep.
have to deal with that particular problem. And so, and the owner occupants are going to occupy the principal dwelling. And the application has to say who's going to be in the temporary apartment. So it's specific to that person.
Right.
So mom or dad is here. And so they have to be related to you. So you can't be putting some
Or you could have a
random,
caretaker.
a caretaker, right?
Does that include an au pair?
Yes, au pair or elder caretaker.
Yeah.
But
So-
in that case, they can be detached, I thought. It's very, like,
Yeah.
There's a lot of
illogical to
detail.
me, some things in it.
So it specifies all the changes required to be made to the existing dwelling. And so, as I said, most of the time, you can't do any exterior modifications. So it's kind of like hidden in the house.
But then think about that for a little bit too. Like if you are an independent widow a little bit, and you might want to have your own door to go into your own unit
Yeah.
instead of having to go in through the
Yeah.
family room. Some of these things just aren't,
Logical.
Yeah.
they don't tie to what you're trying to do. Like if you're trying to give somebody an independent unit, and you can't change the exterior, what if the windows don't even make sense where they are? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, because, yeah.
Yeah, and so, I mean, as I said, so the temporary apartment, it terminates if the property is sold.
yeah.
If the person,
That's the other
Okay.
thing.
comes out, blah, 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 violations, and it expires in 4 years. So it has to be renewed in 4 years.
Sounds good.
4 instead of 5. You and I had the years wrong, but I knew it was a renewal.
Yeah, it's 4.
All right, so Kathleen, do you want to think about
So we should just see
something
what
for
with
that,
little
for
tiny
maybe,
fix for that, yeah.
what timing in terms of which town meeting would you think that might be
Yes.
warranted for?
Well,
May.
it's just
We're
a-
hearing May.
I mean, it's just a little fix. I mean, maybe that by May, the housing committee might have some
Right.
larger thing.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. And I did
Maybe
hear
it's
that the
December.
select board doesn't want to
Yeah.
January
have
means
a long
October.
January. So we're going to say that if to actually submit in May, we would have to submit in December, right?
Right.
Christmas.
So, but if we're following our chart here, the target town meeting would be May of 2020 for
Yeah.
that. And I'm just going to put a Kathleen in the same spot.
Yeah, but as I said, that would be just a little, they may have something more, but I think if we could just do that little fix.
Yep.
So I think on the next one, we don't know what's happening with the Falcone at the moment, but we talked about the next steps on the East Milton overlay. Milton Village, I mentioned, so this is not October, but this is a target
And Denny, I
perhaps of
sent you the
January.
link to Judy's website.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know if we have a target date for when we might do an overlay, but we can say consultant work October, perhaps. I'm sorry, back on the East Milton overlay.
Oh, I don't think you're anywhere near that.
All I'm saying is consultant work in,
Oh, yeah.
in October, just so we can have some kind of a schedule. Perhaps January for Milton Village. Okay, then pre-existing non-conforming business signs. So we were waiting for town council, was that? Or was that temporary signs we were waiting for town council on? Which one were you going to work on, Denny?
No, it was, I did. I worked on it and
I'm sorry, my memory is
no,
just
I
not-
know, I did the work, I should remember, but basically it was just that, there was federal language.
Yes.
That we need town
That-
council to weigh in. It's one sentence.
That's on the temporary signs.
Right.
So let's contact Kevin about that. The other one, though, was, Bill, give us the background for a minute. The pre-existing non-conforming businesses would be things like the
Food Mart.
Food Mart. And now, what happens to them when they want to do a sign, Bill?
They just put it out there.
Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah, and so, but what happens
No,
for a
Zoning Board of
regular?
Appeals to get permission to put up the sign,
Just to put up a sign.
and then they would have to go to the sign review.
All right, and what was the thinking here? That, I think that we thought, the board at the time thought that, why wouldn't it follow the same process as the business districts? And the same requirements in terms of size and so forth, right? Why treat each one as its own standalone without requirements somewhere? Like, there's no requirements for them, right? To April's point, they have to go to get approved, but there's no requirements like there are in the business districts. So that was the thought. Why not have requirements for them? Maybe not change the process, but at least have to, they'd have to follow the same
Same procedure.
guidelines.
Yeah. I like that.
Okay. So, do you think we could do that for May?
Don't we have a draft?
Do we have a
had
draft?
But we had a draft of that
I
one.
think so.
All right, so
I know it was sitting with Mr. Brundek. I'll
can you see where?
find out where it is,
Okay.
yep.
And if we have a draft, then I'm going to suggest May might be okay for that. The nursery language, I think we have to come back to that and look at what that, I remember getting a memo
Yeah,
from Marion, but I
I
just don't
got a
remember the
memo.
details of it.
Yeah.
She wanted to apply all the requirements for Thayer to all of the other nurseries.
There were
didn't
some
she?
inconsistencies
Yeah.
between law, my understanding was, like farm law, like size
Yeah.
of acreage or something. I don't.
Right, because some of it's agricultural, you have to have 5 acres, I think, minimum for agricultural use.
Now you have 2.
Two? Yeah.
And I think our bylaw says 5. Something changed at the
Does.
state level, and we didn't change our local.
Right.
So should we ask her about that?
I'll find the memo.
Okay. We talked about planning board associate now for January of 2020. Well, the historic preservation of large homes,
That's
that
condo
ties to the
conversion.
condo conversion, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it
Is
could.
Or is it
Yes.
something else
Yeah.
too?
But it does tie back to the condo conversion. Because the 34th Century Lane that's mentioned here.
Yeah, all right, so let's
Oh,
just
okay, the
combine these.
legislature reduced the minimum acreage for, oh, they did this a while ago.
Agriculture.
Yeah, we haven't,
In 2010.
Yes.
we're just 10 years behind.
How about their grandfather? It's been 10 years.
No, they changed it again.
I'm looking right here, this article here, that says 2010.
So you didn't drive back for, no.
Drove back for nothing at all. I was trying to stay awake. You drove back too? Rich and I will
the
be
two
over
of you
here.
both came back from vacation?
Last night.
I drove today. I don't know.
See, this is, we had a public hearing scheduled.
Dedication.
Well,
What?
Dedication.
we wanted to get Thayer done.
I know.
And I said that.
Yeah.
I think we all thought we were gonna.
Yeah, it's my
I know.
daughter's fault. It's not.
I'm
it's
not
it's
happy.
I'm
So
not-
much for the
I'm not
champagne I was
happy.
ready to
I know. That's so
I
bad.
actually got a bottle last night.
I have some in my
clients.
fridge.
You should get a bottle after your week.
Oh, I know. How can you afford it? You need to sell it on eBay.
Well, no, I
Help with
could.
that plumbing expense.
It came from a client who had a title problem that I actually had cured by virtue of going to the land court.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. It was a title issue nobody had ever heard of. Everyone I talked to, people were like, "What?" I said, "Yeah." So they had tried to sell their house last year, and it moved out.
nothing
and
worse.
It all fell apart. And
That is
Nothing
actually the
worse.
exact worst thing that could ever
Yeah.
happen. That happened to my neighbor.
Oh, that's sad.
All
They
right.
didn't have title insurance because they moved the property to a trust and the title policy wasn't good anymore.
So I thought title insurance is the biggest scam until my neighbor was telling me that's the only thing that saved her sale.
Yeah.
Is that crazy?
Title insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
My friend sells it, and I was like, I don't believe in
And
this.
it doesn't work if you sell it to a trust?
You had, the old,
Has
the
to be
new
the owner.
ones, the new policies now do, if you have a estate planning trust and you
Yes.
move your property, that's fine, you're still covered. But they had an old policy, and it wasn't covered.
It's worth getting. My lawyer didn't tell me on my first house that I should buy it, so I didn't, and I had to pay a lot of money to another lawyer to fix
Fix
that.
it? Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow. It's good to know.
I know.
Because I thought, what is
So much
this? Who
fun.
has to insure it?
They're not paying me a lot of money, but they did give me a
Because my
bottle of-
first lawyer was disbarred.
Oh, I love Clico. I'm coming over.
I had to get
I want
a,
a gift card for a restaurant. So.
I had to get a second lawyer because my first lawyer was disbarred at the time. That's why they didn't do it. Finish it.
Yeah, sorry, that wasn't on the agenda.
Yeah.
We're
So
off.
you need it.
Clico was not on our agenda.
Once you get it.
I'm
I'm not a lawyer.
So
Bring
the
this
nursery
back in
language,
here.
going back to that, we should have it down to 2 acres, not 5.
Oh, good. Okay.
That got
Okay.
changed a while
Right,
ago.
that's what my recollection was.
Okay.
There might be something else, though, too.
Okay.
And then just lastly, we have talked about traffic mitigation. So maybe, what do you think, Kathleen? I know you said you went over everything on the comments. How do you think we should proceed?
I looked at Alex's 9-page memo, which is like longer than I ever want to read, you know. I'm like, if you can't say it in a paragraph, I'm done. So I was gonna take a look at some other towns' examples of it, sort of see what he was talking about, what we have, and what the,
Did you get a copy
That's
of
good.
the information, the research that Lauren, Bill, and Brian did?
no.
Because, can you send that to Kathleen? Because there was,
Yeah, I know it.
MAPC had a model bylaw for
Yeah.
this, and then they looked at some other towns. Several other towns they looked at. And some of that language, when I,
We pulled some of the language, I want to, from a few different towns.
exactly.
And that's one of the reasons it kind of
Kind of a
sounds
mess.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this came from Natick or
Yeah.
Needham, and so I think that's partly why it might be so long.
There were also some restrictions in the MAPC bylaw that I wasn't sure needed to be in there. I don't know what made it actually into our bylaw, but I remember talking about it quite a bit.
Okay.
So maybe the way we should do it is, once you review those, and if you think you're ready to talk about it, then let us know which agenda we should put it on,
Yeah,
and kind of
okay.
go through
Yeah.
it more
Yeah.
detail.
I would love to keep it, but simplify it.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's a little.
Well, we already have monies targeted, right? So.
No, I think you're right. I mean, it's, yeah.
It's way too complicated.
Since you mentioned
And
Lauren,
limiting.
How is
is
Lauren?
that, are we getting another, is Bill getting another
Assistant?
Lauren?
Well, April, you've been involved in interviews, right?
Oh, really?
We
Cool.
haven't had any yet.
Awesome.
There's been a job posted, not many respondents, but I actually just got some new resumes from
Awesome.
Paige. I think we only got 5 responses to the first, but they reposted it and a couple new ones have come in.
Cool. You only need one good one.
Yeah, hopefully with some experience.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so,
No progress yet. Stay tuned. But I have been delinquent in getting back to Paige, so I'm gonna write myself a note right now.
okay, so,
Is that a recent email?
A couple days ago.
Within the last week?
Yeah.
all right, so I think for
It might have
traffic,
been a resend
Okay.
from earlier. I don't think it's someone fresh.
I'm going to say May 2020 on that question mark, okay? Because some of these may fall off, all right? But it's good to have a target.
Yes.
Given, I'd say that was a good discussion on zoning. So given travel of folks, would you like to defer discussion of revisions to rules and regs to another meeting?
I would personally.
So,
We
so
do it-
just so you,
We do it in like 2 minutes?
can I just, sure, but can I just mention one thing? If, remember, this was, we had asked for, requested, and it was put together related to Walcott Woods, but it's useful in terms of waivers. All right, so as background as to why it's useful for us to look at some of these. We also had this list that had been kind of ongoing for a
Purple.
while.
Yeah.
Yep,
Purple one.
I got it.
Yeah, so Bill, you want 2 minutes on that?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It goes through, it tells you what the section
Right.
is, tell you what the comment is on the side, and it goes back and it shows you why it's wrong on the big sheet. I gave everybody a new copy of the rules and regs,
Yep.
so you can follow through, and it will tell you what section, tells you where it is. I mean, there's a few of them in there that go in and make statements like, they want the plans that to be done on
Oh,
linen.
linen, right, yeah.
It's the number of copies. For as much as it says 5 copies here, there's 5 members of the board. So taking and making 7 copies allows one, that the public can actually have a copy that they can look at. If I send you 5 copies, I don't have a copy and there isn't one for the table. So we changed that 5 to a 7. There's things in here that talk about a concrete pipe versus a plastic pipe. So I think there's another.
So for some of those, Bill, town engineer is going to give us their opinion about, because we don't even follow this, and when the town's doing its own work, we're not following what's in our rules and regs, right?
Right.
Right.
And if you take the page that I gave you, that is the typical roadway
Yeah.
cross-section.
Right.
There are new numbers on it. Those are the new numbers that came from the town engineer. So in order to make these changes and these changes, we need to have a public hearing, go through and vote each one of those.
Can I ask a question? What does Cape Cod berm as allowed with a question mark mean? Is
Do
that
you want it?
recommended?
I just pointed.
Do you want
Do you want to do it? I mean, it originally had a curb,
Yeah.
but it becomes, do you want to do that as allowed? The town uses Cape Cod berm in a lot of different places. Sassamon, they just rebuilt the top of the road, Ridgewood down the bottom, they rebuilt both sides of parts of the road in the Cape Cod berm.
So Bill, we also talked about having not just one roadway, but having, like there's a limited access roadway, having a different
Versus
standard.
arterial
Yeah.
Makes
versus, yeah.
It becomes an issue that if you were to look at Canton's bylaw, there's 3 or 4 different types of roads.
Okay.
Each one of those types has a different width for that road.
Is that
we
something
have-
we should look at?
That's something we should look at because
I know we had a guide from the
supposed to
state
look at-
too.
50,
So are we requiring right-of-ways in, like, anything to be 50 feet wide?
That's the thing, I know.
that's our problem.
Good
That's our
Lord.
problem, we have to grant a waiver for
It's
it.
ridiculous.
Well,
Right.
or a question mark 40.
Yeah, I mean, really.
But that's why we
nuts.
have it, those are for our public roads, so everybody's coming in and making it a private way. Private way,
Sure.
the board is waiving it down to a private way and therefore allowing 30 feet. The 30-foot right-of-way probably allows for 18 feet of pavement.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, if we want to look at the complete streets and bike
Yeah,
paths,
right,
and,
yeah,
I mean, there are things about the roadways, this is sort of the minimum to do, but the roadways are a whole conversation outside of some of these other linen and numbers of copies discussions in my mind. But,
Well, I think we could do you could do the simple ones quickly. I mean, these don't get voted at town meeting. You
No.
just have to have a public hearing and vote
Correct.
them.
Yes.
So
Yeah, go
you
for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
just take care of that stuff.
And we can do that whenever.
Yeah.
my
But I
thought
think,
was
but why don't we
after,
do it? I mean, instead of
Yeah.
talking about it, why don't we just
I
say,
know.
okay, fine, let's do it? And do the changes in the rules and regulations for the idiot stuff, like the linens and the number of copies and the electronic
Right.
submittals. We can do that, have a public hearing and vote that and take care of that problem right away.
The clay pipe, the call boxes.
all that
Yep.
stuff.
That
I mean,
makes
that sort of
sense.
stuff we should be just doing.
What does dead ends maximum lengths mean?
Oh, dead-end streets, most towns have a
500.
limit on how long you can do a dead-end street.
Oh, so
We
we want to
waived, we have waived that.
500 and 650.
Where did we waive it?
Yeah.
Milton Woods, it's longer than that.
Yeah,
And that's
most,
just for a public way,
no, I mean,
private way?
Milton Woods, Woodlot Drive will be a public way.
So this would only, this
Yeah.
dead end restriction applies only to public ways.
Yes.
yeah.
One of the,
Otherwise, you're giving them a waiver.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the issues about that is just, I think, safety.
Yeah, I mean, that's what
Yeah,
it usually
fire
is.
If
Yeah.
you have the road
Yeah.
blocked for any reason, you know,
Yeah.
way down here, and you've got all this
There's an explanation in
lack of
here.
access.
Right, there's an explanation in here about it. So you read that one
Yeah.
paragraph and you'll
Most-
get
Yeah,
it.
most towns do have a limit on how long a dead-end street can be.
I would say that, I think that the roadway widths and right-of-ways is something we're gonna need to consider.
That's fine. Fletcher Steel is another one that is longer, but there are emergency access points out when they make the road too long.
Right.
So there is an emergency access point at the top of the cul-de-sac of Woodlot Drive. There is an emergency access point getting out of Fletcher Steel. So there are,
Yeah, so
These are
it's
built into
500
the
feet in a
road.
residence A and B and C, and 650 in a residence double
Double
A.
A.
I know, back to this, I'd like to consider that whether we need sidewalks on both sides of all street types, but I really dislike granting the waivers for not having any sidewalk. And,
Oh, I hate that, yeah.
and I really want to figure out a way that we don't do that too often. And we need to integrate the complete streets that town that we are with our rules and regs.
Yeah, but as I was saying, I think we should break these out. So we do the simple ones,
Okay?
get them off the list, and then I do think we need to take a serious
Take one
look
at a time.
at the streets situation. Because I think, I think 50 feet's crazy, and that's too much pavement, and
Yeah.
who wants that? Nobody.
Well,
Yeah.
it drives your stormwater
Yeah.
up.
Right.
Your impervious
Yeah.
area, you know, it's,
Well, yeah, I mean.
you have to clear
basically,
more trees off the property for this
Yeah.
right away.
Nothing has, since Indian Cliffs, nothing has been that wide. Nothing has, right?
Well, no, there's a difference between what you lay out.
Right.
You can do a layout that's 50 feet,
Right.
but you don't do the tarmac 50
Right,
feet.
right,
So, but it's a public way and it's 50 feet wide.
right.
And they had this, and you would have any right at all to, at some point, the town wanted to make the road, the
Wider.
pavement 50 feet wide, they could.
They could.
So you don't really want to have it that wide.
Right, but we do want sidewalks.
I mean, the irony about Indian Cliffs is that it's so wide, the pavement, and the sidewalks are in such lousy condition that you have to walk on the pavement anyway. I mean,
Oh, did something just drip?
yes.
Yes, I saw that
Condensation.
earlier.
I've been hearing something going on over there that I thought was a mouse. That's why I keep looking over there. I'm like, what is that? Wonder if there's something dripping over there too.
Condensation within the air conditioning.
Can you say that again? So if you have a road and it's not 50 feet, but if the town decides they want 50 feet,
No. Well, it's a difference between the tarmac, the
Okay.
width of the tarmac could be 20 feet,
okay,
but the actual layout of the road is 50.
okay.
So when you do a taking, I just did one in Hingham, it's 50 feet, is whatever the layout is, it's 50 feet. So the town takes the ownership of that whole wide strip of 50 feet in this situation.
Okay.
And they only pave 20 of it, but, when we had a situation years ago in Randolph where we were putting in sidewalks and we were ripping up everybody's yards, and they were furious, and I was like, sorry, but guess what? You didn't own that. You thought it was your yard,
You've talked about that before.
but it isn't.
this right
We did
away.
taking.
If you look at this
Well, yeah,
sheet,
'cause it
20
was
years
already-
ago.
Yeah.
it shows you a 50-foot right-of-way, but it also says that it's 14-foot, it's 28 foot of pavement
Yeah.
for the road.
Yeah.
That is the typical right now in this document. And the suggestion's coming back that there be 23.
Yeah.
I mean, we approved 18 at,
I know, but that's a public right-of-way.
Yeah.
We're approving 18 at, I think Wentworth, a couple of them are 18,
Then
but those
somebody
are private
could
ways.
rip up your lawn and take it,
Well, they could, because it's,
if we changed it.
well, it would be
Couldn't rip up as
narrower.
far. They couldn't
you
rip
know,
up as far.
It's not as far.
Maybe 5 feet less, really.
Yeah.
Right.
But as I said, everybody thinks, oh, I own that. I own to the tarmac, but you don't. You usually,
But we want them
On
to
10
take care of up
Yeah,
to the
exactly.
tarmac until we regulate.
That goes back to the issue of the man on Parkwood that cut down the trees because he thought he owned to the wall.
yeah.
And no, the right-of-way comes in another 20 feet.
Right.
And see, that's why in like subdivisions, lots of times, or, we'll have a town meeting vote, or have a special permit or something like that, that will say, you can never come to town meeting and ask us to accept these roadways. Because in your particular project, the roads aren't wide enough.
Right.
Or they're not meeting the whatever the town standards are. And so people get totally annoyed because there's a homeowners association that doesn't collect any money. And then the roads fall apart and they start screaming about the fact they paid taxes and, we should be getting these roads paved. And the town says, sorry, but, no, it wasn't built up to our standards. So, it's just a huge battle that happens all the time on these kinds of private ways. But that's usually how you get around not complying with the
Crazy bylaw.
crazy stuff for the public ways. So, but I said, I think if we just sort of narrow this down and just say, okay, let's take care of the idiot stuff and vote those, and then
Yeah, that's,
do the
Sounds good.
hard work on the streets.
okay.
So, I don't know about things like, it says 9.0, fire alarm system, call boxes, handholds not required anymore. I trust
So you're
the
gonna have
fire
to-
department tells me that, I trust.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can get them.
does
That
there
was
have
their
to be
call.
language drafted for these? I mean, we have to draft language, right?
We would have to vote to
Amendments to
amend
this.
the rules and regulations
Right.
to either delete them or rewrite them.
Oh, so they could just,
Okay, so like, we would just say.
So right now, in
allow
section
clay
9
pipe.
point, for example, section 9.0, fire alarm system says, approved by the wire inspector with the guidance of the town engineer, include one fire and police alarm box for every 1,000 feet of a way or any fraction, duct to be buried, handholds not to exceed 500 feet between pedestals. So if somebody says to us, well, we can't even do those anymore, or we don't even require them, we just
the
delete that sentence.
Got it.
Fire chief has asked said that call boxes and handholds are not required anymore.
Yeah,
So
He would
the
like them
fire department
removed.
has asked us
Yes.
Yeah.
to remove that. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Makes sense.
Happy to work with the fire department.
And storm drainage, I'm
They're
assuming.
not asking for new language, they're just saying take that out, okay?
yeah.
And then the storm drainage,
that
that
makes-
pipe, I mean, they
Clay
actually,
pipe, take out the clay pipe and put in the high density
right.
polypropylene,
And that's coming from the town engineer?
yes.
And that's, I think, what we do on every project anyways, right?
Yeah.
When I look at you, I see a drip.
Oh, really? Take it on my head?
It's gonna come right on you. I don't know where the
So-
puddle's laying.
Oh my God, it's right there. I see the puddle. Oh my
Every
God, it's
time
right
I look
next
at
to
you, it
me.
drips down. I thought I was going crazy.
So 5.0,
Table ones.
5.4, 5.13, and 8.0 and 9.0 are the simple ones? Oh, no, and, yeah, just those?
Well, did you say 10.0?
6.0.
10.0?
10.0,
That just sounds pretty easy.
Dark sky
to include
compliant.
reference to
is
dark
easy.
skies.
Okay.
6.1, 6.1 actually.
And 6.1,
Oh, I'm sorry.
do we want to do that or
No,
not? I
was
thought that was
answering
part
another
of the whole
question.
road
Yeah, I
discussion.
think
That's a
that
different
is.
question.
Sorry, yeah.
No,
I think that should be part of the whole road discussion.
Right.
Yep.
And the easements, utility easements 20 feet
Same
wide?
thing, that's part of the road width, right?
Let me just see.
We don't want them coming back and putting in a 10-foot one, that's the issue. There's several out there that have come in and asked for a 10-foot. By the time you put in the shoring,
Yeah,
and one, you have to put in the shoring, two, you have to have someplace to put the dirt.
Yeah, well, I don't see any
Putting it
reason
inside
to
at
change
10
that
feet
one.
doesn't work.
So what, so we're not changing that, you're saying, even though this been
We're
requested?
making it a 20-foot.
It is 20.
It is 20.
Oh, I know, it says at least 20 feet wide.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
So,
We just take out at
But-
least.
I
We
take out
want-
at least.
At least, and make it 20. Because they're coming in and saying, we want to go 10 to 15 feet. We want,
Yeah, but so
20.
how would
But
that
it-
comply?
how
but
does that
they're
work?
getting,
It
they-
doesn't.
If the language says shall be at least 20 feet wide, at least, how can they get around putting in 10?
And then it says shall be down in the next two sentences,
because
shall be
of,
three, all
because
three.
of this. Because it is in here, that some of them come in for less.
Well, I mean, I don't see why we need to change that. We just
No,
don't give a
I
waiver
think we just
for it.
have to, right,
Okay,
Okay.
go back and look at it.
so we can leave that as is.
Well, that was easy.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right?
One. So it's 5, 0, 5,
Yeah,
4,
5.13,
5.13,
8.0,
8, and 9,
and 10.
and 10.
You didn't think
Oh, I-
6.0, the street design speed?
Speeds? I don't know, I thought that we wanted to, I was just,
Consider that with the widths
throwing
and
it
everything?
all of-
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, I think that was
So-
all part of a roadway discussion.
25 mile per hour.
It's,
Pockets of it.
yeah.
Parts, yeah.
Parts.
Where was that one, where it was not posted? What was that, 25?
Where it's not posted, it used to be 30, but where it's not posted now, it's 25.
Zoom 25.
But they-
Except
they-
for not on state-owned roads.
Do they have to put the signs in?
Not
entering?
in, it has to be in densely populated areas.
Right.
And it doesn't
That
apply
was
to
the part
Have they
state-owned
put the
roads.
signs up yet? I thought they were gonna put signs.
They're in, as you
entering.
come into
Yes.
town,
That's what I thought.
but it's in densely populated areas, so that as I get out towards your house, it's not densely populated.
Yeah.
You say it's not posted, well, but it's not densely populated, so therefore it's 30.
Yeah, and this is just, that 30 is just talking about the design speeds for the streets shall be 30 miles an hour. That doesn't mean you actually get to drive 30.
Right.
Okay,
You're just designing to that standard.
be safe at 30.
So why do we have that on the list? We want
No.
to change it?
No?
Bill?
What's that
Did we
about,
want to
Bill?
reduce it?
I think it had to do with things like we were looking
lot of
at,
waivers
we were
now?
looking at for Walcott Woods.
Yeah.
The road was supposed to be for 30 miles an hour, and to be real inside that area,
30's too
you're
much.
designing for
Give
15,
a waiver for that.
right.
Oh, I see.
Well,
Because they want to do less.
Yeah.
They wanted
to-
15.
Yeah, they wanted.
Brushwood is 20.
so the question is, I guess, do you want to make it 25 to be consistent with that?
Well, I think we should save that because that might
Yeah, I
be
think
one of
that's
the
all part of, I
thresholds.
think that's all part of the
Yeah.
discussion on the
Agreed.
streets.
If we design different types of
Because-
roadways.
Right.
Frankly, it's more expensive to design for faster, because you need more. And that's why
The roads get bigger and wider.
the bigger and wider.
Yeah, but we don't want bigger.
Yeah.
No, we don't want bigger and wider.
Yes. But it should be part
So
of
you
that.
narrow
discussion.
down.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
so.
I think,
The
yeah,
idea of
I think
narrowing
so.
down a travel lane, taking it from 12
All right.
feet down to
All right.
11
That was
feet.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that that is something that should be tied to the roadway section.
Okay.
Agreed. Okay.
So
we
I
did
can,
it.
I'll draft a vote
Excellent.
for those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things.
And then, Bill, can you send us the Canton roadways?
Yep.
Just to start looking at? All right, excellent. Thank you, Kathleen.
Because it's easy.
All right,
well,
we
thank
like
you.
that. You're
At
gonna,
the,
That's fantastic.
So for Thayer, we're going to get feedback from our council, and is he going to redraft a decision for us to look at based on his feedback, so that when we come next time, we're fully prepared? And then he can talk us through it maybe, but at least we can take a look?
Yeah.
Okay,
Will
good.
we get that in advance?
we are. We're gonna get it
You might
next
have to
week.
forward it to me.
I will. We're supposed to get it next week,
I will.
Monday or Wednesday. And
So we'll have,
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
don't meet again until the
well,
12th?
I have a question. At the last meeting, Wentworth Farm wanted to take and remove lot number 1 from its bond of the,
You too.
they put up 2 lots. They want to put up 1 lot. And the issue was that they hadn't turned in the paperwork yet. They have turned in the paperwork to John Thompson and to Joe Prundak. They have all of the paperwork that comes in and says that the remaining work on prevailing wage is still, is only about $200,000. So they want to release lot number 1 and keep number 2 as,
So we talked about that last time, and they were waiting for the value.
yep. And they
Now
have,
they have the value?
they have all of it. It's already been delivered to John Thompson. It's been delivered to Joe Prundak, and John Thompson said he has no issues with taking down and only keeping 1 lot.
So it's
Can you remind me
consistent with
what
what we've done
Wentworth
before.
Farm is? Is that the Hamilton project?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's consistent with what we did at
Marine Way,
Marine Way and
Pulte.
Pulte.
Are we supposed to publicly post that?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. It's not on our agenda, so how could we vote?
We did at the last meeting. He just hadn't finished his paperwork in time.
Did we vote at the last meeting?
We
No.
didn't,
No.
because we didn't have the figures.
And it's not on our agenda.
I mean,
So I'll put it on again.
Yeah.
I have no objection to it, but I think it needs to be on the agenda.
Yeah. I think that's, Bill, we're going to have to do that,
All right.
unfortunately.
I told him I would ask.
Okay.
It would be helpful, I think, if John Thompson could memorialize this too,
Yeah, that would be.
in like an email or something.
I think he did that before,
Did
didn't
he?
he?
We
Not-
did do
not
that
this
on
one.
an earlier
Yeah.
project.
On
but
a
not
different
this
one. I didn't see it.
Town
on
council?
No, not on this one.
No.
No,
no.
no, John,
The
engineer.
Thompson.
John Thompson.
yeah,
Right.
did I call him
Fine.
something? Did I say the wrong name?
No, you said the right name, I think. Did you hear the wrong?
He just sent us an email
I
last
thought you,
time.
yes, all right. I
Just
thought you
"Here's
said
my
town council.
thinking, and
That's
I'm
why.
fine with this."
Town engineer.
Town engineer.
I got it.
Yeah.
That's why I said, what?
All right.
It's past 9.
We've covered our agenda, folks.
We did it.
Denny?
I like to move to close.
Second.
This meeting.
To adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Happy summer, everyone.